Welcome to this, Good morning. Welcome to this special meeting of the Constitution and Democratic Services Committee. This meeting has been held basically to go through the recommendations of the three working groups. So we're here to go through the numerous suggestions put forward with regards to improvement on the Constitution. The road today has been arduous at times. Steve, Gareth and myself have now sat through up to 16 meetings with the various working groups to try and come out with some solutions. Attendance at some of the working groups has been a bit spasmodic, and with the recommendations being left to those who did actually turn up to the meeting. The working groups have continued as originally decided back in September. However, I accept the fact that the committee members have changed as political balance has intervened. So this meeting is finally to formulate the proposals as agreed in the workshops, so we can use the Constitution meeting on the 26th to conduct other business. I'd ask speakers to be in debating mode and not feel the need to expand on a point of view, simply put it forward so we can move on. We have a lot of work this morning. So Steve, if you'd like to go through the apologies and the substitutions, please.
Yes, Chair, thank you. So obviously Councillor Hilary McGwill is apologies for today's meeting. Then we have Councillor Chrissy G substituting for Councillor Gillian Brockley, Councillor Jason Shawcross substituting for Councillor Steve Coppell, Councillor Ron Davis substituting for Councillor Michelle Perfect, and I think Councillor Ellis is online. I can't see at the moment, she may be next door, but Councillor Ellis is substitute for Councillor Mansell this morning. That's everyone then, Chair. Just to also clarify the membership of the committee, because the papers do say that the Labour membership wasn't confirmed, but has been confirmed this morning. I can confirm that membership has been Councillor Paul Johnson, Councillor Simon Jones, Gina Madison, Councillor Michelle Perfects and Councillor, the two Councillor Perfects, Michelle and Vicky. So that's just for clarification, Chair. So that's the apologies done with. So back to you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Madison's got hand raised in the room, Chair.
Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to apologise. I will have to leave at 2 o'clock for Education, Youth and Culture. I think that applies to Councillor Shawcross. We need to be finished by that time.
Yeah. Right. Hopefully we won't take that long. Thank you, Councillor Madison. As I said, most of the items this morning have already been discussed in the workshops and agreed by those particular workshop groups. You've got your hand up, Gareth, please.
Yes, Chair. Sorry, just I don't want to delay us any further, but just to note for the record, it does say that there are 6 Labour seats on the agenda. Of course, Councillor Hilary McGwill occupies one of those Labour seats. So that's why when Steve was naming those councillors from the Labour group who are filling their seats, he named only 5 rather than 6.
Okay. Right. If we're ready to start, Steve, I'll hand over to you to bring up the slideshow and we start going through the various recommendations, please.
You need to declarations of interest first, Chair. Do you want the declarations?
Oh, sorry, because I haven't actually seen an agenda. Okay, any declarations of interest? Alice, Councillor Ibbotson.
Only to note that whilst whipping declarations is printed here, whipping declarations apply only to OSCs, which is something that we have discussed during this process, and whipping declarations shouldn't appear on this agenda.
Okay, thank you very much, Alistair. I don't actually have an agenda, so they're not there. Okay, Steve.
Sorry, right there. So before I do have a presentation to share which summarises all of the points from each of the working groups and the recommendations from there. We'll just very quickly skirt through the report just to give some background for the record. At its March meeting, this committee agreed to review the Constitution following feedback and comments from a number of members over a number of periods in previous months. But before we did that review, we actually did a consultation with all members and Chief Officer team to see if there were any further elements and items that were feedback, and they've all been collated as Appendix 1 for this agenda. So all the feedback that we received has been collated there. and that appendix also shows where it was considered. So some went through working groups, others will be dealt with through the committee process with its full work programme. They were all grouped into categories and assigned to 3 working groups, as Councillor Hodges referenced earlier. And those working groups have met several times over the preceding several months to come to some firm-ish and firm recommendations for this committee today to consider. What the slideshow will remind members, but as part of the process in terms of considering the recommendations and the proposals from the committee, what they were asked to do was look at best practice across Wales for the other local authorities, how those could be applied to Flintshire. Do they need to be applied to Flintshire, or were we doing okay? But to act as a critical friend to the committee and council to improve the process so that it was fit for purpose and for the future. When assessing the proposals, the committee are reminded to consider the following criteria. Are they lawful? Do they conflict with the process? Are they necessary, or are they covered elsewhere? Are they workable? Are they clear and unambiguous? Do they promote openness and transparency without harming the interests of the council? And could they potentially be open to abuse? So we don't want to have we don't want to create a worse position that we currently feel that we're in. So without further ado, I will share the slides that were circulated to the committee. And I found this. If you just bear with me 1 second. I hope this works today. Okay, so I'm hoping that this will work through because I've had some difficulties in sharing the screen. So, right, so it's just a little slight delay on it, so that's fine. So I've already covered the aims of the workshop, Chair, in the sort of summary of the report. But just for members to bear that in mind, that the work of the committee was, well, the working groups were tasked with these three sorts of elements. Again, it comes across. There was a slight delay on my screen, so I do apologise why I paused. Again, that's just a reminder for the committee of the assessment for each of the elements. So if we move on, I've done them by working group because that seems a logical approach in terms of the categorisation and grouping of the elements of the constitution. So we will move on to recommendation 1, or working group 1. We're tasked with looking at whether co-opted chairs be allowed to speak and move motions at full council or not to vote. And this was in relation primarily to there's 2 committees that have co-opted chairs of their committees. They have to, Standards Committee and Governance and Audit Committee, but they are not allowed to speak and present their reports at full council. So they both will create an annual report. So it was felt that the constitution needed to be updated just to reflect that, to allow those co-opted members of the chairs of those committees to be able to come to full council, present the report, and explain that to council and speak to council about it. So that is proposal 1 that was agreed, relatively straightforward, I think, by working group 1. So I have drafted some wording along the lines of a co-opted member who is the chair of a committee shall be authorised to return full council and speak on such agenda items and/or minutes specifically relating to the committee of which they are chair, noting that they don't have voting rights at the meeting. So they can present a report, but obviously only councillors who are elected can vote on the report. So over to you, Chair, to consider options from the room.
Okay, just to move things forward, unless someone puts the hand up and wishes to make an observation or a comment, the working group have agreed this one. So if there are no members who wish to comment, then can we take this one as being acceptable to move forward? Councillor Davis.
Oh, sorry, I was just voting to carry on, Chair.
Okay, so we can take this, since there are no objections, that this draft wording is acceptable to move forward. Can we move on to the next one, please, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Recommendation of item 2 was to around notices of motions or motions of notice in the constitution, and there was some concern about the level of guidance.
Can we move?
So not moved on. Slides. No.
So, Steve, we seem to be having the same problem as we did last week. The slides aren't moving on when you move them forwards. Could you share them with Sharon and get her to move them to do the admin on that, or send them to me and I'll do it?
Yeah.
If you give me sharing rights.
Bear with me. Apologies, everyone. So that's you go, sorry. So Sharon, could you make Gareth co-host, please?
I found it on the email.
There we go.
Okay, so like I said, was saying, sorry, before had technical difficulties. The criteria for level motions was deemed to be, or there was a suggestion that we need to look at it. The working group 1 looked at it and felt there was no changes required specifically. For information, 1 to 4 there does is quoted from the constitution of what the current criteria is. There was a suggestion made from the working group that the standard format of notice of motion should be clearer, to make it clear what council has been asked to resolve. And there have been some good examples of the templates used for motions where it's laid out in the 3 different sections of the motion. So that has helped, and I think the group felt that was a positive way forward. So that was the proposal 2. There's no change to the constitution for that one. And if we move on to the next slide. yeah, there's just there is a, as part of the constitution, it does say that where, and I've quoted it in italics there, in the case of a disagreement between the proposer of a motion and the and our chief executive, the chair of the council shall arbitrate. The group felt that there was more guidance needed for the chair in terms of what that process would look like and how it should take place and in what form. So underneath there is so that was one of the suggestions from the group. And another suggestion from the group, which the committee is asked to consider, is that ahead of the council meeting, once all the notes and motions have been compiled together, that the chair would contact the group leaders to look at the notes and motions, because there have been some examples where they've received unanimous support through council. So rather than go into the sort of each notice of motion can take 20, 30, 40 minutes to conduct and get through the business of that particular back one slide, Gareth, that it was felt that the group leaders could agree that where those notice of motions were non-controversial and could just be nodded through, basically they'd be moved, seconded, and then voted upon without any debate. As a safety sort of line in there, it was suggested that where a group leader didn't like that approach, then the motion would be submitted to council for debate and consideration. So there was that sort of caveat in there that to go with that one. So that was that point, Chair. So Councillor Johnson's got his hand raised in the room.
Yes. Am I audible? I hope so.
Yeah.
Just on the on here, there are parts about motions and different parts of that. So I'll raise this one here as starting here. It is this partly about guidance. I quite agree that there isn't enough guidance in the criteria. Well, that definitely does need to be tightened up. I think that on the previous slide from proposal 2, mark 3.3, it goes and says where the motion makes references to facts, etc. That is actually covered within the scope of the motions in the constitution and doesn't need to be included. I think what we do need to be looking at is the processing of motions, and I'm not convinced that what we've got so far goes and works. Having looked at the practices in other authorities, which I think we need to be doing a lot more, referring to what they go and do there, is that, for example, keeping that democratic mandate, which we all need to go and have, is that that all motions that are submitted, they are cleared, and basically they are all approved, notices approved 10 days before full council, as happens now. So all the wording, everything is agreed 10 days beforehand. I think one of the things that struck me going through these procedures is that the constitution, as it goes and stands, is one which assumes a very strong majority party rather than the multiplicity of parties that we have at the moment. So, so keep that 10 days that motions must be sorted out, but perhaps push it back a further 5 days to make sure that we've got a clear validation of motions, because I know that all motions have to be validated by the chief exec, they have to be and the monitoring officer. So that would say that we had to say 5 days to validate, and then 10 days for them to be published. That then I think would give members, groups, like whatever, the time to negotiate or to propose amendments, because I think at the moment it just tends to be very, very rushed. That's why I think one of the issues there is that because the timescales for actually working out what and discussing motions or negotiating on motions, we end up with negotiations on the council floor, which probably wastes more time than actual debating the actual issues. Now, just on that there, looking at how we go and work through that, I think we're looking at what other councils go and do is that sense that we go and protect things the order they are received. Now, that I'd like to suggest that perhaps we went and selected them by lot, in the way of a deadline date. So once they've been validated and approved, we would go and say, right, we're going to choose them by lot. And given that we need to watch what the timings of these motions are, that we go and say, well, hang on, realistically, 5 motions would be a realistic number to go forward to, and that given that we council meetings are there to conduct council business as much as it is to go and be a debating chamber, that we allocate, say, my suggestion we say something like 15 minutes to an hour for motions on the agenda. So all motions which would go forward would happen there. And again, it's not that you go and take those motions away. I think all motions should be listed on the order paper. But any motions that say were outside the time limits, those motions aren't discussed at that meeting, but they go back in the drawer for the next meeting should the member request it, which is perfectly within the spirit and also the law. So key thing here is that all motions are printed so that it's there, and that all motions are then, once they've been, the draw is completed, that all members are notified of what the motions actually are, because so often we don't actually know what the wording of the motions is until about days, sometimes hours before the actual meeting itself happens. So I'd just like to suggest that might be a simpler way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Ibbotson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can well understand that some members may wish to object to some of the proposals that come from the working group, and indeed that's why we're having this meeting now. But I think it's important for members to seek to introduce new proposals at this stage, which weren't introduced in written submissions and weren't introduced in the working groups. Changing time limits and stuff has never been raised up until now. If we all start introducing new proposals now, then this is going to descend into chaos. So I'd suggest that we just move on from this point, lest we open a whole other can of worms where people seek to reintroduce all manner of new proposals that haven't been considered through the proper process through the working group.
Thank you for that. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I agree with Councillor Paul Johnson to limit the 5 notice of motion. If more than 5 submitted, then draw lots. I mean, on the front page, it says that we propose changes to the Constitution that will contribute to the smooth running of council meetings, making effective use of time. I think that's what this is all about, Chairman. And I think this is a move towards that. 10 minutes is 50 minutes. I think that's a good chunk of a meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Few.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Ibbotson. We've decided this process. It's members of the committee that have decided. I don't think it's the place of the cabinet member to change the goalposts now. I think it's a bit late in the day, and on that principle, I mean, we'd be here till midnight, because we're going, if that one is allowed through, we're going to just be going round in circles. I think we leave it as it is now, especially in view of the fact that certain things are more important to discuss at certain times than others. So if things are going to be put, drawn lots to discuss, then the moment will be lost if it's a vital thing that we need to discuss. So I think we should leave well alone and stick with what we've decided. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor G.
Yeah. I totally agree with Councillor Ibbotson and Linda Few. You can't just, I'm a bit shocked at this because I've never attended this meeting before, but you can't, surely this has all been discussed. You can't just throw something in from the side that hasn't been discussed with the committees and the different working groups. You're going to be here all night. This sounds like, to me, this should be done on one meeting, because it's such a big controversial point. So you can't just throw it on the side and expect, oh yeah, let's put it through, and it's all been discussed. So just to support Councillor Ibbotson and Councillor Few. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I support what Councillor Pugh, Councillor Ibbotson have said also. It can look making changes, significant changes at this stage. Like I don't know, like, you know, the decision's been made by the working group, and then to add further information in and restrictions, it could look to some like we're trying to stifle debate, if you like. I think it should remain, I strongly think it should remain as what is before us. Otherwise, what is the point of all these working groups taking, the chair has just said about all the time and effort that's been taken. What would be the point of that? Just my observations.
Okay. Personally, and this is myself as chair, we've been after this since September. So whether I appreciate Councillor Johnson's concerns, these could have been done at one of the 5 working group meetings that we've already committed to. Steve, you got your hand up. Can you help us with this, please?
Well, Chair, the reason I've got my hand up is there's 2 members in the room asking to speak. So I've got Councillor Johnson first and Councillor Parker subsequently. But I would say that the notes that are provided today on the slide are what the working groups have agreed to put forward. So that's just as a and the cons are also checked that, so they have been checked, and what's included here is what the working groups have put forward.
Councillor Johnson first.
It's just that, I mean, while you might say these are all discussed at the working groups, not every working group was aware of what each group was doing. So that's the first side part to it. I think as the chair himself went and made the comments from the working groups, the attendance wasn't the way it should be. So I think that things should be brought up, and I'm sure someone's going to say you didn't go and do it, but I think in meetings I have raised the issues of motions, the time limits and whatever, and the way things are, the way motions are handled. So, but I just think we're here to look at what we take forward and what the working group. This is a review of what we've done in working groups and whatever. So I have no issue about how we go about. This is a process. This is people who work at different working groups can find out different feelings from different people. So.
Okay. I would like, I know this is going to sound, and this isn't trying to get at anyone, but I would like to point out, Councillor Johnson, you were on working group 1, so I've attended the 5 meetings where the notice of motions are being discussed. But anyway, Gareth Owen, Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to add that all the working groups were open to all members to attend. And therefore, if any member had a particular interest in any of the recommendations, they could have had their input there. I don't think it's appropriate to be introducing these curveballs now, which require proper consideration, and it does give an appearance that there is a desire to curb the notices of motion, which are an essential part of the democratic process. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Gareth, can you give us some guidance, please? You've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've just stopped sharing the slides for a moment because I can't raise my hands whilst I'm sharing slides.
Okay.
So, procedurally, Chair, the working groups are not decision-making bodies on behalf of the organisation.
Okay.
They are not politically balanced. I mean, we did try a fair spread, but they are not technically politically balanced. And the recommendations, the working groups can therefore only put forward recommendations. They cannot make decisions, and it is always and was always the purpose of this committee to decide whether or not it wishes to adopt the recommendations from the working group. Now, so from a procedural perspective, what Councillor Johnson has suggested is therefore permissible. I appreciate all the comments that people have made to date about whether or not it is an approach they wish to adopt. But they are two different things, Chair. It is permissible. Whether or not you wish to do it as a committee is a matter for the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Jones.
Thank you, Chair. As we've said, there's a busy schedule today. Can I suggest, Chair, that if an agreement is not met on one of the items, we delay that to the next meeting so full discussion can be had, and we can hopefully just whip through the ones that everybody agrees to. Thank you.
Councillor Ibbotson disappeared. Where have he gone?
So yeah, I was going to propose something very similar to what Councillor Jones just did. So given that he stole my thunder, I took my hand down.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Can I have a vote that we delay this particular recommendation until the full council meeting on the 26th, the full Constitution Committee meeting on the 26th? Hopefully we can get through most of them, and those one or two that are still outstanding, we can just take them on that meeting. It shouldn't be too onerous with the rest of the agenda. So I'd like to propose that. Do we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Ibbotson, second that. All those members of the committee, are you happy to defer this till such time as the 26th? Could you raise your hands, please?
Yeah, so everyone in the room is indicating.
So I'll circulate the proposal.
Okay, so thanks for that. So working group 1, proposal 2 will be on the agenda on the 26th. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Can we move on to the next one, please, Gareth? If you're sharing again, please.
Bear with me, Chair, while I just go through the process of putting the slides back up. Can people now see those slides, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we go to working group, still on working group 1, and we go to
3.
Yeah, I'm trying to hide that video, panel, Chair. It's I know not that one I need to shine. It's there. That's the one I need to get rid of. There you go. So hopefully now you can see that without the meeting controls at the top.
Step back into work.
We just need to go on to proposal 3, please, Gareth.
There we go, Chair.
Okay.
So if I just quickly explain the discussion of the working group, Chair.
Yeah.
Doing. This one was there where to allow a member with the backing of 9 other members in the chamber to object to an amendment to a motion, and the working group felt that was okay, but did feel that a bit more work around it would be needed just to test it through so it didn't actually create more problems than it was intended to resolve. So there is some wording on the next slide which basically mirrors what that says there effectively. But this is probably one that would need to come back to committee anyway, with even a later committee chair, to be perfectly honest. What if we do decide to do a mock council? Because if we try and do a mock council with all members, that's going to be a logistic nightmare to organise in the time between now and the actual next committee. So it needs, I think, it just needs a little bit more work in terms of how that would work in practice. So.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. I don't see any hands raised, so can I take it this one's happy to go forward?
Chair, just to be going to say here that when I was talking about the 10-day rule and whatever, things like this, I do think are quite unedifying on the screen in the council chamber. It's all about arguing. It's about procedural arguments that really we seem to spend a lot of time doing rather than the principle of what the debate is. Going back to what I was suggesting before, is that issues like this will be sorted out within that before you went in the chamber. That's what happens in Parliament, places like that. Don't argue about the process. You work out through the channels. You actually have grown-up politics where you actually go and talk to each of the different groups on things. And just in case, as in my own defence here, one of the things I'm on here as a committee member, not even as a cabinet member, but I bring my experience as a committee member in the same way that I'm looking at group leaders bring their experience as group leaders, or councillors bring their experience as group leaders. So I'm here as not a cabinet member, I'm here as an ordinary committee member like anybody else. And in that, I still believe in being very dutiful about what you have to go and do. And I have read through all the documents, and as was raised on other issues, I have circulated my views very clearly to the work, the Democratic Services Manager. He's had papers on that, and I was sending them to the chair of the committee. So it's not that I've been sitting around doing nothing, because it's something I think is very important. So if I'm making comments at this stage here, it's because of my engagement within the process, and not just that I'm making them. So just in terms of proposal 3 here, I would say again, you can put it on the back burner. I don't mind about doing there, but I think you need to think what you're trying to do with the meeting. If you want to talk procedure, then that's it, and that's the way every council's being about. Then go ahead with that. But if you want to be talking about motions and other big issues about it, I think the proposer should be the person who agrees or disagrees.
Okay, I'll accept Alistair's comment next. You've got your hand up, Alistair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm struggling slightly with what Councillor Johnson has just said. He's suggested that a better way to do these things is to go through channels rather than just do it in the meeting, which, given that on the previous item, we've had something sprung on us in the meeting when there has been extensive channels. I'm struggling with that irony slightly. I also struggle with the idea that we should go through channels when we've had discussions between group leaders in one room. We go back into the chamber, and 10 minutes later, those agreements made there are completely disregarded. So I think it's difficult to say that, oh, just going through channels is fine when the word of some councillors apparently can't be trusted on this. This is a common sense proposal that the working group discussed at some length. Again, I suggest that we take it and move forward.
Right. Thanks for those comments, Councillor Ibbotson. I have come to the conclusion that all the way up to proposal number 7 around notice of the motion is going to create more debate this morning and hold us up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put forward a motion now that all the recommendations with regards to notices of motion are deferred until the full council meeting on the 26th, and that any member who wishes to put proposals with regards to notion of motions puts them in writing to Steve Gudrun before the meeting. I would suggest as soon as possible, so that we can actually look at notice of motions in total clarity together, rather than go through the various little issues one by one this morning and end up being here at tea time. So I'd like to propose that, if members are happy with that.
Second. Yep.
Can I have a show of hands on that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. So, moving swiftly on, I think the next one, Gareth, is actually recommendation number 8, which is with regards to the budget meeting. I think all the others, if I'm right, please check, Steve, all the ones prior to that, up to 7, will involve the word NOM.
That is correct, Chair. They do.
So we voted that through. So the next proposal this morning is proposal number 8 from Working Group 1. And we will, at the full meeting, expect a fulfilling debate on notice of motions and those recommendations made up to now. Thank you.
So, sorry, Chair. Councillor Johnson got his hand raised here.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Again, looking at the papers, my view here would be that the order of the recommendations and proposals is actually wrong. That really what we need to be looking at is the order of proposal number 9 and then 8 and 10, because looking at my view, and I think I did express this view here, is that arrangements for the budget should be about scrutiny rather than about competition or and it's about having things in the open. So basically, I think that proposal 9, then it says the democratic services manage draft a process that will allow alternative budgets. That, in essence, is what I agree with the suggestion there. As now again, bringing in my experience as cabinet member for finance, I would suggest that I could circulate what I think would be, in fact, it does go and meet the criteria of this, that any amendments should be presented and considered by overview and scrutiny committee, and then cross and prior to whatever. So I would be happy to submit those so that people can read them and see how sane they are.
Okay.
And that's so Chair, and that therefore, once you've decided that that process of a scrutiny-driven budget is acceptable, that then goes and changes the dynamic of what you'd expect to go and see at the meeting. So it's really, you need to get the pre-budget and scrutiny section and how that's handled, and then you come into the actual meeting once you've agreed on that.
Okay, that's fine. Proposal 8 basically does refer to proposal 9 and 10 anyway, the recommendations from the committee.
Yeah.
Alistair.
I don't think that proposal 9 is a sensible or workable way to do this, and members will make their own view, will come to their own views on that. And I don't intend to go into particular detail because I think people, we're perfectly capable of forming their own views. My particular concern here is the use of the word alternative budget proposals here. Since I have been on the council, not one single time has any administration brought their full budget proposals before an overview and scrutiny committee. If we are saying that opposition groups have to bring their full budget proposals before overview and scrutiny committees, we have to insist in the constitution that the same applies to the administration. So either we say that all budget proposals do, or all budget proposals don't, but we don't say that if you're in administration, you don't have to put your budget proposals before scrutiny, but if you're in opposition, you do. So we need to be clear that either budget proposals have to go to scrutiny or they don't, and they either have to go in full or they don't. If we're saying that full budget proposals have to go to scrutiny when the opposition, we have to insist the same on the administration, and the wording should be neutral between the administration and the opposition.
Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry, Steve, you've got your hand up.
It's Councillor Johnson. I'll put my hand up for members in the room, Chair, because there's several others here. So it's Councillor Johnson's indicated to speak in the room, Chair.
Yep. Believe it or not, Councillor Ibbotson, you and I are in 100% agreement on that, because I think the practice that happens in places like Powys, practice that happens in Monmouthshire, it is delivered by scrutiny, and what you were saying there is exactly been in the back of my head all the time. That when you're coming through to it, people have gone through it in detail and the merits. Scrutiny is scrutiny. So I'm 100% in agreement with you. So I don't think we're very far apart. But you will see able to see what I put down, what I've thought about it.
Gareth?
Yeah.
Gareth, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. I think it might be helpful, Chair, to explain a little bit of the shorthand behind how recommendation 9 is explained or expressed, in order to help other members of the committee who weren't in that working group to understand what we are discussing. The point is about fairness. As Councillor Ibbotson said, that rules should apply equally to everybody. At the moment, Chair, what we have is the
Excuse me, I've just got to answer the door.
Okay. Councillor Hodge was in the meeting, so I will carry on explaining, and maybe we can make a little progress in his absence, although slightly unusual. The point is that at full council at the moment, proposals could be put forward for how we balance the budget that have not been through scrutiny. And so there is a shorthand to be used around amendments to the budget and alternative budget proposals. Alternative budget proposals would be something that have not been considered by scrutiny, unlike an amendment. So we have in the past had examples where we've essentially had the same options on the table, but different amounts of money have been taken, or members have proposed that we lose one option and use reserves to cover the gap. That would amount to an amendment. What we've never had is a situation, and we're just being careful about this, what we haven't had is a situation where a member has said, actually, Chair, you know, what I'm proposing is I want to spend all this extra money and I'm going to find those savings by going from 3 weekly to 4 weekly collections. And there has been no consideration at scrutiny of the implications of the move from 3 weekly to 4 weekly collections. And so that was the shorthand with which that slide has been expressed. Alternative is something completely radical we haven't talked about before, as opposed to an amendment, which is taking the things that we have considered and using them in different proportions or to different amounts to achieve a slightly different budget outcome.
Thank you, Gareth. Sorry for having to rush away. My wife was locked out. Alistair.
I agree with, I have no objections. I think that the monitoring officer's explanation of the terms here is fine. But I come back to the fundamental issue. In each of the years I've been on the council, the administration, whichever administration colour it has been, has proposed budgets each year that include changes to budget lines up and down, which have never been to scrutiny. And so if we are saying that if an opposition group wishes to do exactly that, they have to go to scrutiny, then the same must apply to the administration. Equally, without knowing what changes the administration is proposing to make to those budget lines, an opposition group can't be sure that their budget is an alternative or not. Because if the administration never reveal what their proposals are, never publish them to members, to scrutiny, or indeed to full council, then there's, the idea that something could be an alternative it is quite different. So if we're saying that, things need to be disclosed to scrutiny, which, as I say, members will form their own views on the extent to which that's necessary, then what's good for the goose has to be good for the gander. And if the administration is proposing to increase budgets or decrease budgets, if we adopt this, then every variation to budgets proposed needs to go to scrutiny, whoever it comes from. Because, obviously things like, if somebody wished to move to 4 weekly bin collections, as the cabinet member hinted in a previous full council meeting, that would be a significant change. But there may be more minor changes that are nonetheless a departure from current policy, which under our current system never see the light of day in scrutiny. And if we think that they should, then we think that they should, whether they come from the administration or the opposition. If we think that there is no need for that, then there is no need for it, whether they come from the administration or the opposition. So what is good for the goose has to be good for the gander. I would suggest that we use the phrasing budget proposals rather than alternative budget proposals, and then whether they are a budget proposal from the administration or a budget proposal from the opposition, they will be subject to the same rules.
Thank you. Steve, I take it this is on the behalf of Paul again.
Yeah, it's just to reply, Alistair. Believe it or not, I think I will stand back, and there are better ways of doing it. And there was nothing in what you went and said before that I could actually go and disagree with. I think that the key thing about putting a budget together, which other counties do, is that they develop a budget and deliver a budget through scrutiny. And that's the key thing to it. So do I want, so what I'm saying, if we're putting proposals forward from the administration that comes forward, their proposals which come forward, sometimes we've sat in meetings and proposals which have come through from opposition members or whatever who have a different perspective, those can be equally valid. But we get there through scrutiny rather than through kind of arguing fixed positions. I think that makes it for a far stronger budget. And I say it's the way other councils do, and I think they. I will circulate it to members, and we can come with something that was basically the same. So I think we're on the same wavelength here. We can do so. But so I suspect the thing to say here is delay to the 26th, I'm afraid.
You want to delay to the... Are you in agreement with that, Alistair?
I think that if Councillor Johnson wishes to introduce further written proposals for members to digest, it's as well that members should have the chance to digest them. As I say, I would have suggested that they should have come before this meeting, but given that we haven't got them, I don't think that we can, carefully analyse them for potential pitfalls or unintended consequences in the couple of minutes we have now. And so I would suggest that if Councillor Johnson does wish to advance these, as he said that he does, then we have no option but to defer. I would say that we've now done 9 of these recommendations, and so far we've only actually managed to agree 1 of them, and we're an hour in already. Given that we're making very, very little progress, and we're just delaying everything to the next meeting, can I suggest that we just adjourn this meeting, given that we're getting nowhere and we're facing lots of new proposals being introduced at a late stage? I'd suggest that we just invite, Councillor Johnson, whoever else may wish to introduce new proposals, to submit them all in writing before the next meeting so that we can have a look at them, and we just deal with it all then.
Do you want to go through it?
I understand your position, Alistair, but if we can at least clear half of them and move on. So I'll let Councillor Ellis, she's had her hand up for a while. Would you like to speak, Carol?
I would. Thank you, Chair. I've got to say this meeting is turning into somewhat a shambles, to be quite honest. I don't know whether it's just my opinion, but I'm becoming very frustrated by this meeting. I think it should be adjourned. And I think the proposals where the budget is actually agreed in scrutiny, it feels to me that that suggestion is taking away some transparency and will stifle debate. And I've been in this council 20 odd years, and there's always been debate in a budget meeting.
Okay.
And it feels very uncomfortable for me to have everything. I agree, everything can go to scrutiny, but what's the point of full council then if everything just went to scrutiny? Perhaps I'm misunderstanding what Councillor Johnson is saying, but it's just like taking away a level of debate.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Before you speak, Linda, I'm going to make a suggestion, a motion. It's obviously that the items from Working Group 1 still have a lot of debate and discussion. So I understand what Alistair said, and I understand Carol's concerns. What I'm proposing is we get on to Working Group 2 and 3 and see if we can at least clear those out of the way. And at least it's a way of moving forward before we actually have the full meeting on the 26th. So would everybody be in agreement with that, to at least try that possibility? Alistair's got his hand up. Simon in the room. Everybody? Right.
Yeah.
Just to give you an opposite, did you want to speak, Linda?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest we go to just item 3, because I think most people are heartily fed up by this stage. Perhaps if we tried Group 3, and we might, I know people have got to get to work and have other arrangements, so how about we just try Group 3 and see how we get on, and if that is as bad as has previously experienced, then we defer the meeting totally.
Okay. The trouble is the slides are in order, so we'll try it with 2, and if it's not working, then I'll carry on with what you're saying, Linda. Okay. So Gareth, can we go to working group 2, proposal and recommendations?
Bear with me, Chair, while I just work through the slides. So we've got proposal 9, proposal 10. I think those were all, there we go, working group 2. So.
Right.
There we go, Chair.
Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Right, okay, so working group 2 looked at a number of options. There's quite a few for working group 2, so I'm half pleased that we haven't skipped over 2 because that's the bulk of the recommendations here today. But proposal 1 was to look at officers' speaking rights at meetings, and after there was quite extensive discussion around that, I think it was felt primarily that officers were speaking for too long, introducing reports and basically reading reports. When members have had the packs and have had the opportunity to read them themselves anyway. So there was no proposal to change the constitution in the regard of officers speaking at meetings, but the group felt that more training should be given to officers who do attend committees and council, and that the chief executive and chief officer teams have speak to their officers to only require them to attend for the specific parts that they are there to present or answer questions on and queries about, because it was felt that for the benefit of like cost saving, or not cost savings, but sort of value for money, to have officers sat through several hours of meetings to wait for their item or after their item's been heard wasn't the best use of their time or council time. So this one was relatively straightforward. I think that there was no change proposed, but other elements outside of that sort of on the periphery could be done to manage that and make the process a bit smoother and quicker.
Okay, so I don't see any hands up, so can we take this proposal as accepted?
Yeah.
Vicky's got a hand up.
I'm just saying I accept the recommendations on proposal 1.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Vicky. Right, that's fine. Can we go on to proposal 2, please, Gareth?
Yeah, again, Chair, this was relatively straightforward. That there was a suggestion that we allow members of the public or press to or those attending the meetings to be able to record the meetings. Our meetings are fully live streamed and available on our website subsequently. So the committee, after discussion, felt there wasn't any need to change that currently. There's no requirement in law to do so, so it was felt that it was best left as is. And the full wording is included, I think, on the next slide, Gareth, just for clarity in terms of rights to attend meetings. It does reference it in there, and also for the next item as well. So
fine. Yeah, I'll move that one.
Yeah, but Councillor Bisson's hand raised, though, Chair. So just to...
Alistair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have concerns about this. I think we should be as open and transparent as possible, and members of the public should be able to film the meetings, as long as they're not being intrusive, as suggested on proposal 2. I would ask that this one be subject to a specific vote by full council.
Surely this will come to full council anyway, won't it?
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman. I think the non-controversial ones we were trying to do today, so that they would just go en bloc, and then we had a few from earlier that we were going to have specific votes on when we got there. We weren't proposing to have specific votes on all of them. I was asking for a specific vote on this one.
Okay, so we'll make a note of that one on this one. Steve? Yeah. If we can get at least some of the agenda out of the way, and then we can clarify what's left. So that said, Alistair, that written in, we can move on to proposal 3.
And again, this was the committee were asked, or the group were asked to look at changing the process for change to the constitution, which says that group leaders are consulted. It doesn't reference non-aligned members, and it was felt that or proposed as part of the consultation that should be amended. During the discussion at the working group, whilst it could potentially work in our current council makeup where we have 2 non-aligned members and 1 individual Conservative Party member who doesn't form a group currently because there's only 1 member of that political party. If by some chance in the future we had potentially 6 or 7 individual non-aligned members or multiple members, then it would be quite an extensive consultation process that needs to happen. So it was felt to leave with group leaders because if any changes are proposed by the committee, they do go to full council for consideration anyway. So that was the sort of long and short of it, that the working group chair for that one. So no changes were proposed for that particular element.
Okay. Right, I don't see any hands raised, so we can accept that one. So proposal 4, please, Gareth.
This probably ties back to the second one about footage being released into the public domain. I think what we were discussing at the working group was whether we allow individuals to take our footage and do with it what they wish. There were significant concerns raised in the working group about what people could potentially do with that if we allow that to happen. We don't prevent like the press using footage, but we do control it ourselves. I think it's important that we do retain that control for for reasons to do with I can't think of the word of it now, but for personal data, etc. We're the controller for that. So it's important that we have that, and it's available publicly anyway, so members can, the public or press or whomever doing research can review the footage. We have it online in perpetuity, so there's no time limit in terms of how long we retain our footage for either. So it is there, and the working group felt it wasn't necessarily at that particular moment in time to change the constitution.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so we'll move on to proposal 5.
Yeah, sorry, there was a hand raised in the room. Councillor Gina Madison raised a hand in the room, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
You're all right, Chair. You can't see me. Thank you very much. In respect of this and also proposal 2, I spoke strongly against this at the working group, and I shall do so at full council on the 27th of January. We have a certain amount of control over anything we release ourselves or by the press, but we don't have any control over anything released by members of the public. I spoke strongly against this at the working group. We have female councillors, we have councillors who fall into the protected groups under the Equalities Act 2010. Councillors with disabilities, older councillors, councillors of sexual orientation and race. And after I spoke about this, we've had this weekend, over this last week, the absolutely appalling revelations about the use of the social media platform Grok, which is posting sexual and undressed images of women and children. And I think that if we are allowing people to take films and photographs that are posted onto Grok in this way, we will become legally responsible. We will become legally responsible because we chose to do it. I spoke strongly about this in the working group, and I will speak strongly about it on the 27th of January. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks for that, Gina. But the working group did agree no changes. I take into account your comments, and you've said you're going to bring it up again at the full council meeting. David Coggins-Colgan.
Hello, Chair. I just thought it might be useful, perhaps the monitoring officer might just want to give some context on what has just been said about legal culpability to the council for someone else doctoring images. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, David. I was under the impression we still retain copyright on anything, so anyone who did something untoward would be liable by us. But I'll hand over to you, Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, Councillor Coggins-Cogan is correct that obviously if somebody else were to doctor an image that we had published in good faith, it would be the responsibility and the culpability would be on them rather than ourselves. What you say, though, Chair, is also correct that it is possible for us to assert the copyright in images and videos that we release. That allows for some use, but would then be a legitimate use. So it would allow use by reporting, for example, legitimate reporting, and it gives us but it gives a residual level of control in relation to malefactors or ill will. So, Chair, that I think was behind this recommendation for. I understand the concerns, and I understand the gendered nature quite often of criticism on the internet, and why some groups feel more strongly about that than others, because quite frankly, as a man, I am embarrassed by what members of my sex say and do to women on the internet.
Thank you.
And we should all stand up. We should all, as men, we should reject that. So I can understand the concerns. However, I
do know,
as Councillor Cogan intimated, we wouldn't be liable.
Thank you. So I'd suggest we continue with this recommendation, and we highlight the other alternative actions we could take if such anyone did abuse this. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Can we move on to proposal 5, please, Gareth? Steve?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah. So this was to do with if the leader became incapacitated for any particular reason. That currently states in the view of the chair that they're not able to complete their duties. That the working group offered that there were no changes to the constitution. They felt the constitution was sufficient in the way it was worded to remain as was. Although it did suggest that there may need to be some clarification around the role of the deputy leaders in the absence of the leader. But by the sort of title of they are, but if the leader is still in post, although maybe unwell for a period of time, then deputising the leader is sort of within their duties and title. So there was no express need to change the constitution for this particular item, Chair.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised, so we'll move on to proposal 6, and you'll be happy to know we're halfway through.
Again, this was to do the leader. If the leader chose to resign or chose to leave their post and vacate their position, there was a question raised about what would happen to the cabinet in that event. And it was the working group felt that if the leader chose to resign because the cabinet is appointed by the leader who's appointed by council, that the cabinet should also vacate their position at the same time until a new leader of the council is formed, and the cabinet can be appointed by that new leader. So that was the sort of recommendation from this one, Chair, for the committee to consider. Obviously, there is an issue around the interim. So if a leader resigns and immediately the next day there's no cabinet or leader in post, then what happens to council business? There would need to be some mechanism in place for that. So I think that was the next portion of the bullet point there, that the chief officers make decisions between meetings in such emergencies. There needs to be some consultation with group leaders before any decisions are taken. So those are the two themes from the working group to take forward, Chair, for committee.
And Chair, this is
Yes.
because council appoints the leader, and we can't have a situation where anybody else appoints the leader other than council. But the expectation, I think, amongst most members is that we have deputy leaders, and in the event the leader is ill, we expect the deputy leaders to step up to the plate. And that, I think, was unanimously agreed within the working group. The final bullet point, the second bullet point here, is simply because the Constitution at the moment says that if, as an officer, we undertake an emergency decision under delegated powers, we consult with the cabinet members. Now, clearly, if the leaders resigned and the cabinet members have therefore also resigned, we would not be able to consult with cabinet members, and there might be an urgent decision that would need to be taken. We don't use those powers rashly. We use them very sparingly. In the event that happens, we obviously we might need to be able to protect the interests of the council or our residents. So we would just consult group leaders.
Roger, thank you for that. Is everybody happy? You've got your hand up, Steve. Is it somebody in the TDS room?
Yes, Chair, it's Councillor Madison with hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Steve. I have to confess this is a meeting I wasn't at, the only one I didn't attend, because we had what I believe is known as an internet outage at home, and I lost the connection. I therefore need some clarification on bullet point 2. If we don't have a cabinet, say for a period of 6 weeks, what happens to the duties performed by cabinet members? For example, the signing off of papers. And to give a specific example, say that the cabinet member for social services was due within that month to attend Pride of Flintshire, Tea Croisati and visit to care home. Who would those duties be allocated to instead? That's my question, and I'm sorry that I missed the discussion on this.
So two things I think in response there, Chair, because there's a couple of different aspects to Councillor Madison's question. If there were to be a decision that needed to be taken urgently, then that would be where chief officers would consult with all group leaders, and we would make those decisions using delegated functions. If there were to be a civic event, then we would perhaps look to the chair and the deputy chair to be or the vice chair to be attending those civic representative functions. And clearly, Chair, there are some representative roles for cabinet members on wider bodies. For example, there is the adoption panel or the adoption partnership that gets mentioned at cabinet next week. We would just have to send apologies. We would keep that period as short as possible. If it were likely to be a long period, then I think, Chair, we would be looking to call an emergency council meeting to appoint a new leader if there was a long gap. Now, typically, the only long gap would be over the summer. In which case, when council business is very much slower and the need for urgent decisions is very much lower. But as I said, if we thought we had a long gap, no cabinet, we'd be calling an emergency council meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that a historic hand, Steve?
No, Councillor Johnson wants to speak, Chair.
I do appreciate that. I just feel that it is going quite complicated, and the political decisions have to be made by politicians, basically. The idea that group leaders suddenly are able to exercise executive functions, which in terms of consulting with group leaders, I find quite disturbing, to be honest, and I'm thinking about more thought about that one. There's, upon the resignation of the leader of the council, cabinet members vacate their positions. As you know, I know now there are things, political responsibilities that I have to go and do, that they require political sanctioning, but whatever. So you can't suddenly say, I'm just going to wipe out all the cabinet members until something is gone and something is gone and sorted out. The current system where you go and have a deputy leader function who takes over works very well. And I would go and cite the example of Caerphilly recently, where the leader of Caerphilly went and resigned. He was then replaced by his deputy, and the system worked perfectly well following that. I mean, nobody expected that to go and happen. I mean, then going defecting to the Greens, whatever. But what I'm saying here is the current system, as it is here, it goes and works. And let's be honest, that as soon as the new leader of the council comes into place, he can go and choose the cabinet that he wants to. Or she, yeah. On these days it will be, I'm sure. So I just feel this is, it could create a vacuum, a power vacuum, because even sometimes if a leader was to suddenly say, I can't stand this and resign, suddenly when you were doing in the middle of week in February, you got so hats off with the budget, it's an example, and I can say, so hats off, I've got to resign, maybe for personal reason or whatever. What do you go and do? You say, we're stopping having the chief executive. You've got to have that political control which is kept in place there. So it's not just about the long summer holidays, it's about making sure that there is a leader of the council or actually leader of the council at all times.
Alistair.
The problem with what Councillor Johnson's just said, which was discussed extensively in the working group when this was being considered, is the issue of an accountability vacuum. The cabinet are not accountable to council, they are accountable to the leader, and the leader is in turn accountable to council. If a cabinet member goes a bit nuts and starts making decisions which are not proper, then the recourse is for the leader to sack that person. Without a leader in place, the cabinet member cannot be sacked. And so there is no accountability for cabinet members. A cabinet member, if a leader resigned because he knew that he didn't have a majority anymore, part of his one of the groups in his coalition decided to leave or whatever, he might resign in frustration, but then his cabinet would have essentially unchecked power and could do a great deal of damage in trying to sabotage things for the incoming administration, to make things as bad as possible so that the incoming administration get the blame. That would clearly be an undesirable situation, and this is designed to guard against it. Without a leader in place who can be recalled by the council, there is no means for the council to impose any kind of accountability on cabinet members. The issue also arises that if you leave things in place, what happens when the leader of the council also holds a portfolio? So to go with the example that Councillor Johnson has just stated of a leader resigning during budget period, what if the leader of this council was also the cabinet member for finance and resigned in that period? Who takes over then? Because if we don't pass this, then we're saying that chief officers don't necessarily have that power, and there'd be no consultation with anybody else in the exercise of it. But no other cabinet member would have that authority delegated to them by the leader, not least of all because there would be no leader. It is open to question whether cabinet members have powers to act when there's no leader in place. And so we end up in a complete mess anyway. The cleanest thing is that the cabinet go with the leader who appointed them, which also as a courtesy means that the new leader has the choice of whether to appoint the cabinet members again rather than having to decide whether to sack them. And so that, and then yes, if we need a leader urgently and there is no council meeting scheduled, then we can call an emergency one. But the only clean way to do this is the way that's set out on the slide. And we had a lengthy debate about this at the working group, and that was the position the working group landed on, having considered everything in detail. The only thing that I would add to this is that we've talked about resignation here, and I would suggest that these criteria would also need to apply in the event of the removal from office of the leader by the adjudication panel for Wales, which would also serve to leave the leader's position vacant, or the death of the leader.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to put a little bit of common sense into this. We're not talking in terms of weeks. We're talking in terms of the immediate working of the council, which would probably already be set out. The procedures, what was going on would be set out. And we're looking at basically giving the powers to the officers to just keep things running until such time as we can get an emergency council meeting and put it right. So that's just to put a little bit of meat on the bone, that we're talking short term powers to the officers, just to clarify that. I just want to clarify that, because that's what was discussed. As Gareth and Steve know, we attended all the meetings, and that was the ethos behind this comment. Does anybody else wish to?
Chair, I think this is one to go and delay, because I think what we're getting is some nice theory coming out here against the practice, which I think is very, very different. I mean, I'm more than happy to discuss with members some of the work I go and do, that the leader goes and does, the deputy leader goes and does, things that you just simply can't say the chief exec's got to go on this. For example, just as an example of the theory, you could end up with a WLGA meeting, the leaders meeting, or the minister, who's often you get a minister at, and Flintshire will say, well, no, for next week, so we haven't got a leader, but we're going to send the chief exec, and I'm afraid the chief exec cannot, the way WLGA is structured, they cannot attend. So there's a lot of theory coming here. I think we need perhaps, again, I'm more than happy to find my duties here, just to give an overview of some of the issues that, both as having done cabinet, as a cabinet member, and then as deputy leader, to get so some things we have to go and deal with. And why I think that creating that political vacuum, if someone like Caerphilly can go on an acting leader, then perhaps the question we should be saying is, how do we go and get a procedure which we have an acting leader in place? And it may well be that when we have that vote for the leader, the deputy leaders are named similarly, so that in the event of that, then that problem is actually gone sorted out any of the fuss we're talking about now. So my proposal here would be that when the leader is appointed, that when that vote is taken, that there is a second vote taken for the deputy or deputy leaders of the council. Problem solved. Is that I do apologise. I'm thinking at the top of my head there, but that might be the solution.
Yeah, I will comment on one thing though, Paul. You said political vacuum. Yes, there might be a political vacuum, but would there actually be a vacuum in the continued working of the council and the processes of the council? Yeah. I think that's a different position. Carol, did you have your hand up or you put it down?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. I did. These scenarios, surely wouldn't Welsh Government send in, like they did when there was issues in Anglesey, commissioners to actually take over the running of the council if it was for any length of time?
Yeah.
You know, there would be procedures where we're talking about these scenarios. Oh, if it goes on for 6 weeks, if it goes on, it wouldn't be allowed, would it? Really?
No.
In my view, in my experience, as I say, I can't remember exactly what the issues were in Anglesey some years ago, but one of our very experienced councillors went over there as a commissioner to help sort things out, and I'm sure that would happen. Just the point.
Yeah, thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to make progress, can I second Paul Johnson's proposal? Thank you.
Do members want to defer this further? Okay, can we add this to the deferred list? Steve, please. Proposal 7, please, Gareth. Steve?
Apologies, we were on mute, Chair. Sorry, there's noise in the room, so I do apologise. Yeah, recommendation 7 was to look at whether the chair was incapacitated, or it was felt that the chair was incapacitated in similar vein to that of the leader, and that the constitution be amended to reflect that where that happens or were to be deemed the case, that the Vice Chair, Chief Executive Leader of the Council, and Leaders of the Advisory Opposition Group would be asked to confirm in their view that the Chair was not able to carry out their role, and therefore that the Vice Chair would step in to undertake that duty. So it would probably happen in very extreme cases, and I would sort of suggest as one example, maybe if a chair was suffering from the condition of dementia or something, where they were confused or whatever. So that might be an option there. If the view is expressed by those listed in that bullet point, that the chair was not capable of taking a meeting or conducting their duties, that they could look to temporarily remove them and have the vice chair in place. However, there is the caveat that a special meeting of the council would need to be called to ratify that view, and the chair does have the option to write to the chief executive to state their case for it not to be undertaken, and therefore they would resume their duties. So it sounds convoluted, but I think in a simple form is that if there's a view that the chair's not capable of current duties, that the individuals listed there can put that forward to council. Council can either agree or disagree, and the chair can also have an objection to say, well, actually, no, I'm fine, I can carry on and do what I need to do. So it seems relatively straightforward, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, you've got your hand up.
I should have taken it down,
Sorry. Okay, so there's no objections on that one. So we'll move on to number 8.
Sorry, Chair, can I just check here that we're looking at the incapacity of the chair, that I am not clear what we mean by the capacity of the chair. There needs to be a definition on that. If we're talking, if there's the health issue in there, I think it's quite probably very dangerous territory to go on. That's the competency, the health competency, whatever, of the chair of the council is decided by the chief executive, the leader of the council, the opposition group. That surely there has to be some form of medical inputs into that. I think you really have to define what you mean by incapacity within there. Those of us who've been some experience of human resources and when we work in trade unions will realise how difficult issues of capacity and what they are and how those are defined is very, very complicated. So I am not convinced that what we are proposing here, having looked at the way other people deal with capacity, is correct. I really would like a definition of capacity.
Okay, I think when we discussed this, we took into account that the chair, the vice chair, the chief executive, leader of the council would seek opinions on health and various other issues before making such a question, and it didn't need to be highlighted within the constitution, but that's what we decided at the time. Alistair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What Councillor Johnson has just said is utterly unworkable because the council has no authority to request or require a medical opinion of the chair, nor does the council have the right to access the chair's medical records held by the health service or whoever. So the council is incapable of getting any medical certification. If the chair of council fell into a coma and was, pretty evidently not able to act as a result, the cabinet would not be able to get, anything certified as urgent potentially. The key functions performs, such as arbitration on notice of motions, would go completely. Would be impossible to do. Equally, the sealing of contracts and so on. There needs to be some mechanism by which the chair's functions can be transferred where it is very, very apparent. Now, this process is riddled with safeguards. It requires the unanimous consent of those people listed in the first bullet point to trigger it. And then, as at the third bullet point, the chair themselves has absolute authority to rescind it unless council themselves as a body has voted to replace the chair. So even if the vice chair, the chief executive, the leader of the council and the leader of the largest opposition group have all agreed the chair does not have capacity, the chair can overrule them if they're capable of writing a letter. And if they're not capable of doing that, then I think we can agree that they don't have the capacity to be sealing contracts on behalf of the council or making determinations on urgency. So there is a clear safeguards set up through this, and ultimately it requires the sensitive judgment and the unanimous sensitive judgment of those 4 people, who clearly, those 4 people and the chair, so 5 in total, would not give that agreement if the chair was in fact capable. So I think we can all agree that this is, very much protected against, and that there is no reasonable way, no practical way that any safeguards such as doctor's opinion or anything could be provided.
Thank you, Alistair. Is that a historic hand, Steve?
No, Councillor Richard Jones is requesting to speak, Chair. With your discretion, you can allow to speak.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just this is getting to the ridiculous, if I'm being perfectly honest. There are deputy chairs that can take over that position, and just to even talk about capacity in the way you've just spoken about it, Councillor, is crazy. Capacity within the Mental Health Act is the ability of a person to understand information and make decisions in life, right? Now, if you're going to use the word capacity or incapacity, which even reflects that, it would clearly take a medical opinion. And that is why this is a non-starter, because you cannot start talking about somebody's capacity. Capacity almost leans towards capability, which, I mean, you cannot talk about capacity in this way. So you may have some fundamental kind of academic understanding, but in the practical world of mental health, capacity means something totally different. So your example of a coma is not the best example, but it's also an example of what could be considered when you start thinking about capacity and incapacity. My suggestion is you leave it alone and you accept that the deputy would take over that position. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into really deep water, and you can shake your head as much as you want, but if you start talking about capacity in this way, you will get yourself in deep water.
I'm getting a little bit frustrated because we're trying to talk in general terms of the senior members of the council actually trying to assist and help with the running of the council, and if they feel the chair is under stress or duress, to help them. And it just basically is a bit of guidance. It's not mandatory, it's a bit of guidance to put into the constitution. And I think we're delving into places where we don't need to delve. And this is one of the issues when we actually did the working groups to try and put stuff into the constitution that was adaptable and could be used. That was all. So I'm getting a little bit frustrated.
Chair,
yes.
sorry to interject. Again, I have this problem with not being able to raise my hand while I'm sharing slides. We did, whilst we were discussing this proposal, we removed a word that potentially had a legislative interpretation. So where it says that the largest opposition group be asked to confirm, previously it said that they'd be asked to certify, and we took the word certify out and replaced it with confirm because we didn't want confusion with statutory regimes or technical meanings to words. The word capacity here clearly creates a similar level of ambiguity about whether we are talking about a legally defined term. I think the intention behind the proposal was just where the chair is unable to act. So I don't know whether it helps, Chair, if we were to say, rather than in the event that there is a question over the capacity of the chair, if we just say, in the event that the chair is unable to act, and then we carry on as before. That might avoid those problems, Chair. Though I appreciate there have been comments about no need to do this at all, because actually that would be potentially implied. But if the committee were minded to do it, then perhaps we just rephrase that first sentence to say, in the event that the chair is unable to act.
Okay, move on. Okay.
Oh.
Tina.
I think it's Carol next.
I think
Chair, you've got a number of speakers.
For some reason, Chair, we can't hear you. You don't appear to be on mute, but we can see your lips moving and we can't hear you.
Still can't.
Can you let Simon?
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you again now, Chair, yes.
Oh, for some reason I got cut off.
Yeah.
I was going to propose that we adopt the wording that Gareth Owens, monitoring officer, has just given us with relation to this recommendation and move this one forward. Do I have a show of hands for this?
Excuse me, Chair, if I may.
Okay, you want to talk, Alistair?
I would also like to talk, please, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have
I've got my hand up as well.
Okay.
For some
So there's a couple of issues. First of all, to deal with what the monitoring officer has just said, I have concerns about that wording. I appreciate that he's coming up with it on the fly, but there could be unintended consequences to able to act. It might be that the chair is able to act, but that the members of the council are not happy that the chair is able to act appropriately or rationally. So we need to come up with some wording that, covers a situation where, the chair starts taking their clothes off in a council meeting. They're clearly able to act, but they're not necessarily doing so rationally. I think when we talk about capacity, we're very clear we're talking about the capacity to act as chair of the council. There is a clear distinction between the capacity to make decisions for oneself and the capacity to make decisions for the 165,000 residents of Flintshire. And it's very clear what we're talking about when we're talking in the Constitution. And so I don't think the wording creates any real ambiguity, and I think that we can stick with it as is. If we do want different wording, then I'm open to that, but it needs to be different from able to act. The big issue with what the deputy leader has said is that we have a chair and we have a vice chair, and if the chair can't act, the vice chair takes over. No, that is not true. At the moment, there is no process by which the vice chair may take over from the chair, may act in the chair's stead, with one narrow exception where the chair can't be found in relation to the urgency procedure. In all other matters, the vice chair is unable to take over the duties of the chair. And so the suggestion that this is a problem that we're not trying to solve, that we don't need to solve because it's not a problem, is for the birds. What Councillor Jones has said of, well, if the chair's not capable, then clearly the vice chair would just take over. That is what we are trying to establish here. It is not what exists at the moment. So either we do this and we get to the position that Councillor Jones has outlined as sensible by the means he has outlined isn't, or we don't get to the position that he has outlined as sensible. So we clearly need to put in place some means by which the vice chair may take over the role and functions of the chair if the chair is not capable of acting in a reasonable manner. Given that we are still on Working Group 2, we are halfway through Working Group 2's proposals, and this meeting was meant to end 5 minutes ago, that we've got an education meeting coming up this afternoon, and we are making zero progress because new ideas keep being put in. I question what the point of going through the working groups was, considering that everything that they put forward seems to be being reopened. I would suggest that we just adjourn this meeting and hold the items over to the next meeting, when perhaps members who wish to bring forward new proposals might deign to put them in writing beforehand, or, put them through the proper process when this was asked for months ago and went through months of working groups. So I move, Chair, a procedural motion that this meeting be adjourned.
Do I have a second for that? Councillor Hugh. Yeah. Those who wish to adjourn the meeting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are there any in the room?
No votes in the room, Chair, for that.
Those against adjourning the meeting? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have to continue. But so it's up to you. You're next, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Interestingly, there was a short period there where the Chair was unable to act because his microphone wasn't working. So I do think we do need clarification of that term. I was going to say, considering what we spoke of at the start of this meeting, we did say that if we didn't get consensus on an item, we would move on to the next. Can I suggest we simply just move on to the next?
I quite agree with that, Simon, and we can move on to the next. What I'm worried about is we end up moving every single one forward to the next because we keep getting new items being brought to us at the last minute. But I'm quite happy to move this one on to the next one. So can we move on to the next proposal, please, Gareth?
Excuse me, Chair, I've had my hand
Oh,
up.
sorry. I got confused with everything. Carol, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that capacity isn't always a mental issue. The Chair, for instance, could be physically unable, could be in an accident or anything like that. So I think that using the word capacity and actually using it as a mental purpose or reason, I don't think that's the correct word. I know that, yes, when a legal term, as a person got capacity, a mental capacity, but capacity can mean different things, can't it? That's just my view. Thank you.
I totally agree, Carol. The annoying thing for me is, having sat through all the meetings, we went through this extensively in the working group and we came up with a phrase that was acceptable and which Gareth was quite happy from a legal point of view. And now we're having to reinvent the wheel. So we'll move this proposal 7 on to the next, to future discussion. And can we have proposal 8, please, Gareth?
So there we are. Slides back up. Hopefully people can see them. And there we are. We're on to.
Yeah, proposal 8 was, I'm hoping it's a straightforward one. It was more, this was to do with how the constitution was written rather than the actual content and the theory behind it. Because the way it was written, and the next slide, if you want, Gareth, does sort of have the two versions. So how it was written, sort of one for the other, so it appeared to be restricting the right to. So if you can see the revised word, it just moves the after assistant and to the where the cursor is there to the next line down, so that it just clarifies that it's not
applies to both.
Applies to both. Sorry, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Alistair?
Yes, Chair, very briefly, no problems with this, but the last bullet point on there, that consideration be given to a form of words that would avoid items being put on forward work programmes just so that a member could have access to information, but they don't want to discuss it. I think that when this comes to full council, that form of words needs to be included. So if in hopefully unanimously accepting this eminently sensible proposal, we could state that as a committee we have considered it and ask for that form of words to be included when this comes to full council.
Thank you for that, Alistair. I can't see any problems with that. I don't see anybody else with their hands raised. So we can accept proposal 8, and can we move on to proposal 9?
Yep. Mine was simply to remove the reference in the Constitution to the social media protocol, which the quotation is there. For members of the public or people attending, we have no control or governance over those. So it was a kind of a point in the Constitution that just needs to be taken out of the paragraph. So
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so we'll move on to 10. So there was a sort of a suggestion that we need to have a process in the Constitution that where a group appoints their leader, that there is a formal notification to the Democratic Services Manager to clarify whom that is. So all group arrangements, etc., have passed through that way. For example, substitutions is one where it needs to come from the group leader rather than just an individual offering a substitution. So it was just tidying that up, and there is wording within legislation which can be brought forward to sort of wrap that one off, Chair. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so number 11, please.
And similarly, where a group changes the leader, there should be a process for that. Obviously, how a group changes their leader or appoints the leader is for that group to determine themselves, whether it be through the group or the wider political group arrangement. But if a group leader is changed in a term of council, then there needs to be a process where, again, the Democratic Service Manager and other mechanisms are updated accordingly so that the process is followed through. So, and again, there is appropriate wording we can come up and bring that across from legislation to do that.
Thank you. Again, no hands up, so let's go on to 12.
Again, the 6-month rule was thought to be clarified, and what the working group agreed was that basically, in short, training and or workshops do not count as attendance for the 6-month test. Only where members attend, and it probably should include council, but council committees, subcommittees, joint committees, working groups or task and finish groups, but they're one and the same. If they're representing the council on an outside body, or where the chair or the vice chair is representing the council in a civic role, they would count as the formal attendance record for members. And I think the next slide should have some wording around that, just to update that relevant section of the Constitution. So, like 17, I've added 17. I've just bulleted point 17.1 and 17.2. So, just to clarify that only those meetings are listed there do count as a formal record. Other members' attendance, the training and workshops do not do so.
Okay, again, I've got no hands up, so can we move on to 13, please?
Again, as the example at the start of the meeting was, we need to make sure and check that the agendas do not include whipping declarations. So that was an error on my part, so I apologise to the committee for that. That the working group felt that there was some clarity around how a group would be whipped. So there was some additional wording to be included within the definition of whipping, which is in the Constitution, and that members receive training on whipping declarations, so they are familiar with what it can look like and what form it would take. And I think the next slide, Gareth, should have that proposed or suggested. It is small text because it was quite a big chunk of the Constitution, but it's basically adding the words "however expressed" in the relevant points, because there was it can be made in different forms and different ways, not just in writing to individuals. So that was a suggestion from the working group, Chair.
Okay, again, no hands up, so 14.
Sorry, Chair, there is a hand in the room. Very sorry.
Oh, sorry.
There's a hand here, sorry.
Yeah, you just want to add that there are committees where, although there might be no sanction for whipping, but there are some committees where whipping would be wholly inappropriate, and things like the governance and audit, planning, licensing, and maybe others. So I think there needs to be something here in how that is addressed.
Okay.
Would it be, sorry, should just have a whipping guidance for Welsh legislation in there? Because I think that will probably cover what you're saying.
If these are just minor amendments, can we defer this then? And we'll put the minor amendments in and bring it back on the 26th.
Chair, if I might, when we
Sorry,
talked about this at the working group, we agreed the training for members on whipping declarations, and that would include, as Councillor Parkhurst has suggested, saying, whilst it's not a whipping declaration, actually don't have whips on planning, licensing subcommittees and so on. I think we could also pick that up with things like the planning protocol, which gives us some further guidance there. So if there isn't anything in the planning protocol at the moment about whipping not being appropriate for planning committee, we should include that. So there are other opportunities to include it, Chair, and we will look at that. And if Steve and I make a note, then when we deal with this, we can list, I think, where we will, those other areas where we will pick that up, because I understand that concern and it is correct.
Okay, so we'll defer that to the 26th, given it's time to make any such amendments, Steve.
Yep.
So can we go on to the next one, please, Gareth?
Councillor Ibbotson has got his hand raised, Chair.
Oh, sorry, sorry, Alistair.
Sorry, that was to do with number 14. I object to number 14. It's trying to solve a non-existing problem. We already require members of licensing committee are trained. If somebody is trained, why should they not be able to sit on licensing committee? The reason given was that they won't be familiar with the previous decisions of the licensing committee. If that is the case, why don't we ban any councillor from ever sitting on licensing committee who does not right at this minute and go the whole hog? And say that the licensing committee membership must remain static from now until the end of time, because the same problem happens when new members come on. There is absolutely no reason to remove substitutes from licensing committee, and we should ditch this proposal.
Do we have a seconder for that proposal?
Slide 14, just if anyone else can, it just has the wording, which is very simple in the Constitution. But
yeah, it's as simple as that.
But obviously, if the committee are discussing whether that needs to apply, then that can be removed if need be.
Yeah.
Well, that's minor, so we'll defer that to the 26th, Steve, and make some minor amendments.
I'm okay.
I'm no issue with that.
Chair, there's only been one proposal to not include this one.
Yeah.
But mind you, not moved either, so.
Councillor G.
I'll second Alistair's proposal.
Okay. So can we have a vote on Councillor Ibbotson's proposal just to remove this one? All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. So that proposal's failed.
Chair, are there any against?
Are there any against? Yes.
Now it's failed, Chair.
Yes, sorry. I'm getting so frustrated with it. Okay, so that's failed.
You've no idea what you're doing.
We'll leave that one in abeyance and move on to the next one because I'm conscious of time.
15. I'll agree with that one. What's the abeyance?
So back to 15. There was a feeling that Council Procedural 21, which should apply to section 4.1. I think the current way the Constitution is written, it does intend that to happen, but it just needs to be explicit as in procedural 9.7 for questions at OSC. Similarly, so I think there was general agreement around those two, and then the topic of debate at the working group was about amending the threshold for a secret ballot and differentiating it from a recorded vote. And I know there is terminology around what a ballot and vote is, but I think for clarity and ease, secret ballot was the preferred term used. So it suggested that currently 20 members are required to go to a secret ballot it was suggested that we move that to 50% of the membership of a committee or council. And the request for recorded vote to remain at 25%, where but if both are requested at the same meeting, then a recorded vote takes precedence over secret ballots. And I think that was well, so
everybody agreed with that. So I've got no raised hands for that. So we'll move on to 16.
I can do all right. I can do fine.
This did cause some the working group couldn't agree on an outcome for this one. So in terms of how that would work in the work process of working groups, they could put two positions forward. So this was to deal with a voting council to remove the leader. The constitution currently says once in a 12-month period. There was one suggestion that it be reduced to a 6-month, once in a 6-month period, or to allow more than one motion to remove it, more than one in a, where 2/3 of the council supported that stance. So those were the two proposals put forward by the working group for committee to consider. So I would suggest, Chair, that on this instance, unless there's a difference between the two, a third option, for example, that a vote is taken on which of those two the committee prefer. That's just a suggestion for you to think about, Chair.
Okay. So I don't have anyone wishing to speak. So if we ask those who prefer option 1, which is allow a motion to remove the leader only once in a 6-month period, those in favour of that proposal?
Councillor Johnson was just like to speak, Chair.
So it's very simply that I just like, you just say if there's another option. I mean, the third option, of course, is to go and say there's no change. Yeah. So like the third option of no change on that. Okay.
So those in favour, I'll find my thing again.
Well, Councillor Ibbotson got his hand raised, Chair.
We can disagree to both of them, in which case that's it.
Alistair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy with either option. I would go with the second option on the screen, and I wasn't going to speak, but given that Councillor Johnson has now raised a third option, that we leave things as are, then I think we need to discuss why we weren't doing that before, which is that doing that means that you end up with a position where the leader is basically invulnerable after a failed vote, can't be removed from office, and therefore has complete freedom to act potentially reprehensibly. And so we do need to ensure that that doesn't happen, that there isn't an incentive for a council leader to call a vote themselves that they know they will win, so that they can make themselves immune before a controversial decision and then can behave inappropriately thereafter, knowing that they can't be removed. The current system creates perverse incentives, and we need to change those in order to guarantee the democratic health of the council. So either of the options on the screen are sensible, as discussed by the working group. Leaving things as they are is not a realistic option.
Okay. Simon.
Yeah, once again, I'm going to repeat my earlier comment. There doesn't seem to be consensus on this, so I would suggest that rather than debating it for the next 20 minutes or so, we just move on. If that's all right with you, I would like to table that.
It's okay, Simon. You don't even need to table it. I was going to do that anyway. So we'll move that one on to the 26th, recommendation 16. So finally, hopefully these are going to be quick. We're getting on to working group 3. We're on slide 35 of 44, but I suspect some of these are going to be moved on to the next meeting, but we'll see. Recommendation proposal number 1 on working group 3, please. Gareth.
Chair, before you do, Councillor Shawcross has asked to speak.
Councillor Shawcross.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just for those who are on education, can I suggest that we wind things up at 1:45 regardless? Because we're going to have a little bit of time between now and when we start the next meeting. Thank you.
I'm all right with quarter.
School now.
Teresa said she hoped it would be a short meeting.
I'm conscious of the time and education starting in 20 minutes. I'm going to take the chair's authority and we're going to terminate this meeting now without even starting on working group 3. My reasoning is we're going to start talking about questions. We're going to start talking about call-ins, and there's no way that is going to be conducted in any shape or form in 5 minutes. So I would thank everybody for their indulgence. Steve, I'll be in tomorrow for Crow's Cross. So can we arrange to meet at some point after that meeting to go through what still needs to be done?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank everyone for their indulgence. This is meeting 17 for me, so it's been a long road. So thank you for your indulgence. I'm sorry it got confused and we had more items coming up. All I would say, the meeting on the 26th, I suggest you bring a flask and some sandwiches.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.